Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome, welcome. I hope your Saturday morning is going well. My name is Katrina Lashley. I'm Program Coordinator of Urban Waterways here at the Smithsonian Anacostia Community Museum in Washington, D.C. Welcome to our summer harvest. So many of our regular attendees know that we're in the 10th year of our urban garden workshops. We've been doing virtual workshops over the course of the pandemic. And the workshops come out of our larger Urban Waterways project, which has been documenting relationships between urban communities and their waterways. We want to see how people are connecting to their rivers, to their waterfronts, and how they're engaging them and how they're documenting their lives along these waterways. And we very quickly understood that the waterways are only just a pathway into discussing our connection to the environment, how we define the environment, and that while waterways, the blueways are a key part of our communities, we also have our the green of our communities and also the gray. So the blueways, greenways, and then the green spaces. And so this urban gardening program really is taking a look at our green spaces and how we connect to them, how we steward them. And so on one hand, you do learn how to garden from A to Z, but also have you thinking about this idea of empowerment. And once you have a connection to your green space, once you steward your green space, how empowered do you feel as a person, as a community member? And how is it really just kind of reaching back into your own family histories, your cultural histories, cultural legacies, in terms of connection to land and also the care of what we grow and what we put into our bodies. So we are very, very happy to announce that we are now, for the first time, welcoming attendees to our garden space for the first time in almost a year and a half. And today's workshop will be with Derek and our attendees the entire time. As usual, we will have time for Q&A throughout the course of our conversation. So feel free to put your questions in the Q&A panel. I'll field them to Derek as we move along, but also feel free to communicate with each other in the chat and to converse back and forth. So once again, thank you so much for joining us for our summer harvest, and I'll turn it over to Derek. Derek, thank you.
Cool. So let me take a minute just to get over my excitement. And thanks for everybody that's joining us virtually today too. One of the things that has been always melancholy is this time of the year. You get through the summer, the days are starting to get a little bit shorter, and you start to think about what worked out in the garden and what maybe didn't. And it's also time to start thinking about harvest. It's time to start thinking about next year's plants. So one of the important things about harvest this year, we decided, since we were virtual, we were going to take some time, and if we can pan up to the sunflowers as I talk about them, we were going to take some time and actually have some sunflowers in the garden. This time of year, what has happened with the sunflowers that are done, all of this that you see here are where birds have been eating the sunflower. This back part where I'm picking away is where they haven't gotten to yet. And so the nice thing about having sunflowers in the garden, if you have the space, is that you get the flowers and the birds actually get the sunflower seeds. And with seeds like this one's not quite ready yet. This is one of the mammoth sunflowers, but you can see those big white seeds, and eventually the birds are going to find out that they're there and they'll help themselves to them. So when you have sunflowers in your garden, you can leave them be as long as they're not getting in your way until we have an actual frost, and then you can take them out of the garden, because right now they're providing food for the birds. The other thing we had in the garden this year, and because of the intense heat, I know this looks like a mess, but this is our arugula, or what's left of it. The thing to think about with the arugula is the arugula produces loads of seeds. That pod has already almost broken open. I don't know if we can see that, but they're really, really fine seeds that they produce. So even when the arugula is done for what we want for the eating, in your garden, if you leave these seed pods, you will end up getting more arugula. See, there you have the seeds. So that's another part of harvest, is to make sure that not only are you, and then the nice thing about the sunflowers, the ones that you pick, you can put in a bouquet in the house. So you've got stuff for the birds, you've got stuff for your future arugula garden or your future leafy vegetable garden, and you've got stuff to put in a vase inside. Now, we grew a lot of plants, and if you can help me, we've got beets in this garden, and the one thing we've got to do, we've got to harvest our beets, but we've also got to make sure, so we got to harvest our beets, but we've also got to make sure that we don't mess up the oregano that we have, and we don't mess up any of the other herbs that we might have coming up. Right here, remember I told you about the arugula self-seeding? That's a baby arugula. So if you know what you're looking for, you won't pull this up. And what I want you to do is with a thinner blade shovel, what we're gonna do, and you go in, you pull it back a little bit, you go in right close to the base and you just push up, okay? And then look at that. That's our beets. So I'm gonna leave you with that project. When you come in, if you wanna come in on this side, try not to walk too much on the rest of it, but if you can get these guys out, some of them might be really, really small. The really, really small ones, what we're gonna do is we're gonna replant them. Okay. And they're gonna grow all winter and we'll have beets next spring. But there's some big ones along the back here too for you to pop up. And I'm gonna leave you and I'm gonna check back on you in just a little bit. Okay. Thank you. All right, now, hi Barbara. This is my favorite gardener. Sorry, don't mean to. She has been with us since the start. This is Barbara Morgan, long time resident of this area. And today she's gonna go help the kids get started in school. So I want to be like you when I grow up. How about that? Barbara had an interesting question about basil and what's eating the basil. The interesting thing about basil is something started eating it. And most of the time, because of the amount of oil that basil has, it's not going to keep eating it. It's not going to continue eating it because the oil that we like is too pungent for most insects. So basil tends to be a pretty insect resistant plant. Here's one that the insect got a little bit carried out. I mean, got carried away, but we're going to harvest the basil today, Barbara. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the tops off of it. We're going to divide this up with our participants today. So this is stuff we can take home. We're going to put it in the shade so that way it won't droop. Now, when you get it home, one of the things that you want to do when you get it home, if you've been to a local place where you can cut your own veggies and stuff like that, you want to go ahead and pull those bottom leaves off. And once you get it home, and this is even the stuff you get from the grocery store, you make another fresh cut and you can stick that in water and the basil will actually root for you. So you could take one of these sprigs and start a whole new basil plant. So Barbara, what I want you to do for us is go in like I just did. I want you to cut, and I had given you a pair of pruners. I just want you to cut all of this, and then we're gonna leave the rest of this basil. When we have our September workshop, you've got 2 more to work on. When we have our September workshop, if it's not too cold, basil will produce as long as the nighttime temperatures don't drop into the 50s. So we're gonna take this away today. You guys are gonna take that with you. And then now, you thought you picked the easy bomb. I need, Margaret, can I get 2 of the big shovels, please? Or Chepe, bring me 2 shovels. Not that one, Margaret. That one's actually really good for digging stuff in. We're gonna do the potatoes. Come on. So you can't really tell right now because most of it is gone. But in the spring workshop, we put in some Yukon Gold potatoes. You can see right here, a lot of the foliage is gone. This is what the potato foliage looks like right now. A lot of it has gone away, but all along here, he's going to start digging the potatoes for me. And you see, what you want to try to do is not do what he just did. He just went through there with the shovel. And see, the nice thing is we started with one potato in the spring, and these are all going to be potatoes that we're going to be able to take home today. And if you think you had a good potato from the store lately, you'll be sadly mistaken once you taste one of these. And now, who has a, can I get Margaret, can I get, there's some Home Depot bags right over there. Just fill these up for me as he's digging them out. And we're going to split all the harvest. It's like the old times where we harvest everything. Once we're done, we're going to go ahead and share the bounty. As they go ahead and dig that up. Whoops, sorry. Wow. And if anybody remembers, if anybody was participating, we had one potato that was starting to go bad. Barbara, you can go ahead and cut the rest of the basil and put it all in the shade over there for us. And I'm going to squeeze by here. Now, we also had a really good year with the zucchini. So this zucchini, when it gets to be this big, you can use it for some of the recipes where it calls for baked zucchini. You can use it for a zucchini bread and things like that. We had a really good run with the zucchini this year, but it's time to let that go because we're going to be planting other things. Remember I said that when you go to some of the more expensive restaurants, zucchini blossom, dishes with zucchini blossoms are some of the most expensive dishes that you can have. So these zucchini blossoms are a wonderful thing. You can look it up on the internet, recipes using zucchini blossom. I'm going to pass these zucchinis over to you. And Jax, if you can get some of the potato harvest, we got some really, really great potatoes happening. Look at that. That's really great. And the zucchini blossoms, let's put it into another bag. This particular zucchini, I think we should enter into the state fair. That's a super zucchini. See what organic gardening does? You didn't use any chemicals? No chemicals, all organic. Well, that's true. I know that. Here's another big one. And see, when you know you don't use chemicals, we've even got a spider that's decided to make its nest in our zucchini. If we'd been spraying chemicals on there, we would not see that spider nest. So what we're going to do with this, we're going to take all this out. We've got one little baby green pepper left, but the taste will still be good. We're going to take all this out and get this area ready for putting in cabbage and Swiss chard. Now, we're going to go back to this middle bed and see how Barbara did. We got a bumper crop of potatoes. All of our veggies, young ladies, we can take up there. There's a staging area with some herbs and stuff that we're going to divide everything out when we get done. Now, I did say we can leave the basil here. This basil we're not going to leave. If any of our participants want to try to take one of these home, They're welcome to it. The reason being is we're gonna turn the soil at this point. And the importance of soil, I cannot understate. You talked about if everything was organic. Well, it is. One of the things that I found, I had to special order it. It's perlite, which normally, when we get it, it's about that big. This is a larger perlite. So this is what comes in commercial mixes. This is one that I special ordered. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna turn that under. They're working on this bed now, but we're gonna turn that under, get that perlite mixed in. What the perlite does is it is a volcanic rock that will absorb 10 times its weight in moisture. It will hold that moisture. So especially during the middle of the summer day, when it's really, really hot and you can't get back home to do a second watering, having perlite added into the beds is a good thing. And what we're gonna do is, if any of our participants want to take home these basil plants, they're welcome to them.
Can you start those other little potatoes with the
Yes, Miss Morgan had a question. She asked, how did we start the potatoes? What we did was we took a potato that started growing, that had the eyes growing out. We broke off all the eyes. We cut the potato into about 6 or 8 sections. We let it dry for about an hour to an hour and a half. And then we planted just the pieces of potato, just drop them in the ground. And Mother Nature does the rest. And from one potato that was probably about that big, you see how many potatoes we got. They do. What was left, there was, when you came in, we were just talking about that. A lot of it had already died back. In the garden, you leave the potato until the plant dies completely back. That's when you know the potatoes underground are ready to harvest. Yeah.
sweet potatoes?
The same thing with sweet potatoes. The leaves, once the leaves start to yellow, the question was, do the leaves need to be yellow to harvest? Once the leaves start to yellow, that's when you want to go ahead and start digging the potatoes. Now, there's some people that will leave the potatoes in the ground. You can leave them in the ground until there's a chance of a hard freeze. So you could leave them in the ground, mark it out, and go out every day and dig out fresh potatoes from now till probably late December, early January. So that's the nice thing about it. That's what a root cellar was all about. It tried to reproduce as though the vegetables were still in the ground, and therefore you had a longer time that you could eat it all winter.
Basil?
Basil does not freeze well unless you've already made pesto. Right.
All right, thank you.
So if we can go back over here, let's show everybody how we're going to turn this in. Because what we're doing now is one of the most important things that we can do in the garden. We're amending the soil. Everybody that's been to one of my workshops before, I talk about soil every time. I've had people say, you're talking about soil again? And I'm like, yes, because it's the one thing that we have to have healthy. The big white perlite is not going to be attractive. Other people are going to say, what's that in your garden? Tell them, mind your business. I know what I'm doing. Because the perlite is also going to give air to the soil because it's a very light product. Feel how light that is.
Looks like they come in the boxes from Amazon.
But it's not.
Yeah, that's what I thought about.
It's not styrofoam. It is a volcanic rock. That's what perlite is.
Hey,
So
Derek,
yes.
I'm sorry to chime in. I have some questions that kind of what you're doing right now. So can I quickly ask you a question that someone
Sure.
posed? Okay, so it's about the zucchini, okay? This is a question from Maria. Is he letting the zucchini go and planting something new to keep the soil fertile, like a rotation? She's brand new to gardening and just wants some basic information and knowledge.
That's a great question. The question for my participants here who didn't hear, someone that's watching us virtual wanted to know if we're taking out the zucchini and if we're going to rotate the crop to something else. What's the answer?
Yes, we're entering cabbage.
There you go. See, she even knows what I'm going to put. We're putting in cabbage. That's one of our garden warriors. We're putting in cabbage. The zucchini, what we would do next year, because we did have a zucchini borer when we were here last month, we found the zucchini borer. So next year we won't use this box again. We'll go to another box and do the zucchini, and we'll plant something else here next year as a summer vegetable. But now we're going to do cabbage and we're going to do Swiss chard, which is something we haven't done before. So Margaret, can you pass me the cabbage? And hopefully that answered the question, Katrina. Do we have any more?
I just had one quick in terms of how often you water the garden.
You water a garden every time it needs it. When we had that awful weather a week ago when it was 98 degrees with a heat index of 105, your garden may have needed water twice a day because we were also in a very dry spell. Last week, you didn't have to water the garden at all because we got really drenching rains. Now, if we have a passing thunderstorm, just something that passes by and you look underneath a tree and it's still dry underneath that tree, you still need to get out there and water that garden. A garden's going to take a lot of water, and it's all temperature dependent. As the days get shorter, as you rotate your crops out, you're going to need less water. Mature roots, older plants need more water. Younger plants like these cabbages that we're going to put in are going to require less. So what we're going to do with the cabbage, and hopefully that answers the question. What we're going to do with the cabbage now is we're going to line these up. And I want you to come on in here since you knew what we were putting in here. And I want to space them. I want to space them about that far apart. If you buy cabbage like this at home, you really would want to take away and divide the plant apart because each cabbage is going to be a head. So very gently pull it apart. You want to put them about 9 inches apart. And if it's a really tiny plant like this, I'm just going to take the leaves. I'm going to put it in a salad today. So I'm not even going to reuse that. And just, if you can, run me 2 rows of cabbages. And if someone can give her a hand planting those, that would be great. Yeah, give us 2 rows of cabbage, divide them up as we need them. And can we start turning this bed now? Okay. Now he's going to do the same thing to this bed, what we just did. And now we're going to go tackle one of the last summer beds that we have. This bed over here has it's got cucumbers, very good.
And tomatoes.
It's got tomatoes, and it's also got green beans. See if you can spot my green beans. We put some bush beans in, and we put them in a little bit late because in this bed we had kale.
Yeah, I see the little beans.
So what I'm going to do, these cucumbers are not going to be really good salad cucumbers at this point. Because of the rain last week, they were half this size. They were ready for harvest. We knew we had the harvest coming up, so we left them on the vine. They absorbed all that moisture, and this is how big they got. They're going to be heavily laden with seed. So what you can do is you can clean them out, peel them with a potato peeler, and use the skin in a smoothie. Or if you have any baked vegetable recipes, cucumbers can also go in that. They will throw off a lot of water. So if the vegetable recipe calls for putting water in something that you're baking in the casserole, don't if you're going to do cucumbers.
I know some, we got a lot of ants.
Yeah, the ants don't really mess with them. A lot of time the ants are actually getting moisture off the plant, or they're farming other insects that might be on the plant. Now what you want to do is, cucumbers are a vine, so we want to go through, pull all this up, cut away these cucumbers. Thank you. And then with the green beans, what I like to do with the green beans is pull the entire plant up. And when you hold it upside down like that, it's really, whoops, it's falling apart on me. It's really easy to get the green beans off. Whereas if you try to pull each individual green bean off, it's a little bit harder. This vine is not cooperating, it's breaking apart. But as you see, you can pull off your green beans like that, and then the rest goes into the compost. We need to cut that away. So this is the end of the harvest of the green beans. The reason most people have already finished their green beans is they put them in the spring. These green beans we actually put in about a month ago, maybe actually about 6 weeks ago. And that's why we have summertime green beans. Right, and we're gonna do that. We'll go through, we'll clean the bush off. There's some more. And now I'm gonna work my way through here. I've got to cut away all the vining of the cucumber. Here's another cucumber. Here we have a green bean plant. And one of the good things about doing it like that, you can also see if there's anything, if there's nothing worth using, that's too juvenile, we can just toss that. We're gonna put that in compost.
Why don't you bring the other green bean plant over and put in compost?
Yes, you can hand that over to Mark. Now, I know everybody's looking at the tomatoes because that's what everybody wants this time of the year. We're almost there. Yeah, see, a lot of the green beans are done. So, this time of year, what we're really looking at harvesting are green tomatoes. A lot of the red tomatoes are done. There's a couple here. Unfortunately, insects have gotten into them. But those fried green tomatoes, you can also pickle them. You can put vinegar, some coriander seed, a little bit of onion, put it in a pickling jar, and you have a really good salad side. So we're gonna save all of our green tomatoes that we can. And then the plant is coming up. When you dig out a plant like this in your garden, shake off those roots because they've got a lot of nutrients still connected to it. Margaret, if we can clean the rest of those green tomatoes, thank you. That's probably just crabgrass is what it looks like. Now, unfortunately, these tomatoes have been discovered by something that got in there. If you're not eating it as a fresh vegetable tomato, if you're going to cook with it, what you want to do is you want to cut that area away. At the top, there's a bug that got in the top, might have been a bird. Cut that away. Make sure that you cut any part that's been damaged away, and you can still use it to cook. As long as the sauce that you're going to make is going to be boiled, it's going to come to a boiling temperature, absolutely you can use those. The other thing that you can do, and we'll talk about it when we get up there, is you can save the seeds because the tomato is loaded with seeds. So you can save the seeds for next year.
Just let them dry
You let them dry.
and leave them out.
You would leave them on a paper bag for about 2 weeks, and then you can put them in a fresh paper bag, close them, and put them in a airtight plastic storage container. Thank you. And see, something even ate this as it was green.
Oh, yeah,
But the fried green tomatoes are delicious.
they are.
Go ahead and grab that. That green bean has nothing. All right, so we're almost there. The one plant that I'm gonna leave in this garden is Margaret. Can you grab that? Oh, thank you. These might be young enough to use because it's actually, I did a pickling cucumber. So these might be young enough to use in a salad. Now, if we had smell TV, can you tell me what you're smelling right now? No, it smells like pickles because they have this in pickles.
Oh.
What did you say? Say it louder. Dill. The dill we're gonna leave, because dill will live through the winter. So what we're gonna do, you can take dill home, take a stem of it, put it on a paper towel, let it dry, or you can take the entire stem. If you have a recipe that calls for fresh dill, put this in a Ziploc bag in your refrigerator. Do not wash it. Wash it when you're ready to use it. The water will make it go bad. But if you put this in a Ziploc bag today, after just harvesting it, in 2 months, it will still be good. If you water it, if you put water on it, it's gonna rot. Or if you want dry dill for recipes, lay it out on a paper towel. Once it dries, crumble it up, and then put it into a jar. So, but with dill, what you do, we're gonna harvest everything that's above ground, and we're gonna leave all of this. Clean it up a little bit. We're gonna leave all of that in place. It's gonna start growing back. Leave it alone all winter. Next year, it's gonna get to be that tall. All right, so we're gonna take those out. We're gonna take this stuff out. My guys are gonna come in. Margaret, there's some green beans on here. They're gonna come in. They're gonna work the soil in this bed. We're gonna go back now and check on the progress of my cabbage. Wow. Our rows are a little bit crooked. We got a little bit of crooked rows, but the vegetables don't know. But one of the things, it's a great lesson. One of the things you want to make sure when you are planting like this, yeah, it's a little bit, this one's a little bit intoxicated. Candace's bed is a little bit intoxicated. Candace just hit the nail on the head. Can we grab the Swiss chard, please, someone? The Swiss chard we want to harvest next month. It's going to be ready for our recipes for the fall. So Candace, that was the right answer for the mistake. Now with the Swiss chard, we are going to leave all of this together. It doesn't matter. So what I want us to do is do in the middle. So this is 4 plants in the middle here, in the middle, and then on the border until we run out. Let's get those planted. Now, how do we do with our beets?
They're all pretty small.
A lot of them are pretty small, but did we get some that are usable?
Maybe
Yeah.
30.
Huh?
Maybe 30.
Like 30 that are usable? That's,
The majority of them are tiny. Some
Yeah.
of them are just a root, like it's not.
if it's just a root, we're gonna put them in here.
Oh, okay.
So bring all the little beets that are just a root, bring them over here for me.
What do you make with chard?
You can do baked recipes.
Okay.
You can do, there's a recipe for Swiss chard focaccia, which is bread. You can use it in many, I like it just as a stir fry, just with garlic. It's got a very particular taste. Just with some garlic, some onions, and the Swiss chard. That's how I would do it.
Olive oil.
And
Hey,
some olive
Derek?
oil, of course.
All right.
That goes without saying.
Hey, Derek?
Derek, we're taking it actually
Yes.
as a question.
Yeah, any time for questions, Derek?
Yeah.
Okay, so the first one is from Jean. So what are the obstacles to gardens like this being established throughout DC and in other cities?
What are the obstacles?
Yeah, to gardens like this being established throughout DC and in other cities.
Well, there's the obvious obstacle that if you plant, and sorry, I'm going to be laying this out as I'm answering the question, so I'm not looking at the camera. If you plant a vegetable garden in an urban setting, you have to make sure you're not going to have any animals that are going to be using the bathroom on your garden, because dogs and cats are carnivores and we cannot digest their fecal waste or their urine. So that's one of the challenges. Number two, you see the beautiful fence that we have. That's for the other wildlife like deer and raccoons. So the fence is loose enough that a raccoon's not going to have confidence in climbing, and it's tall enough that a deer is not going to want to jump in here. Then we've got the challenges of water, because if you're going to plant an urban garden, you got to make sure it's in a space where you can come back out and water it. So those are the three most obvious. And then making sure that the soil was not ever used for munitions or anything like that. A lot of the schools that we have might have been a site of something else before. So do a little bit of research before you start digging in the ground.
Do you have time for more questions, Derek, or do you want to wait till the next question break?
Yeah, let me just explain one thing and then we'll
Sure.
jump in there. So, okay. All right, here's our education class. These little babies here. What you're gonna do with this, you're gonna take this part, this you're gonna save for if you're doing a smoothie, or if you're gonna do any kind of cooking and you want a little bit of natural color, beets will give you that. If you see where my hands, you see the red? So it gives a lot of good color. You can put this in a stir fry. This root, even though it's small, it's big enough that if you bring water to it, you bring water to a heavy boil, like a roaring boil. You drop this little beet in there for a minute and a half. You take it out, you put it in a strainer, you put cold water over it. The skin is going to just peel right off. And then you've got the sweetest, talk about tomatoes, cherry tomatoes, forget about it. This is the best beet ever. Now, when they're like this, the root's still there, but it hasn't started to swell. Those are the plants I'm going to replant. And in the spring, we're going to have a beet harvest. So what we're going to do is we're going to selectively eliminate some of these. Like, see, this little one is too small. But if it's anything that's the size of a quarter or above, let's go ahead and save those for our beet salad. Yeah, see, all of those are really good. This one we're going to take out. And this one we're going to take out.
toss those leaves into a salad?
Yes, the leaves can go into a salad. Absolutely. This one is still good too. So anything that's tiny like this, it can be replanted. Remember, it's a root vegetable. And so what we're going to do, we started with seeds in the spring, and beets are one of those interesting plants that you can get to grow multi-years. If they're not ready for harvest this year, they will be absolutely ready for harvest next year. Next question, Katrina.
Sure, Derek, give me 1 second. Okay, so the next question, does he use the same type of soil for every bed, or does it depend on the crop?
What was the, I'm sorry, there was a motorcycle going by. What was that
So
about
do
the soil?
do you use the same type of soil for every bed, or does it depend on the crop? This is from Maria.
We use the same type of soil for every bed. If you're using the proper soil amendments today, because we know we have good topsoil in all of these, we're adding sphagnum peat moss, which is going to help retain moisture, and we're adding the perlite, which is going to help retain moisture. Why are we doing two things for moisture going into the winter? These beds are raised. The winter is going to have heavy winds. We're not going to be able to water, and things are going to dry out. So by adding the sphagnum peat moss now, it's also going to drop the pH, which is going to tend to slow the plant growth down a little bit for most things. Because a lower pH, plants tend to be a little bit more putsy about how they want to grow. So all the soil is the same. All the amendments are the same. When you see stuff in the marketplace that says tomato booster, cucumber grow, look at the back and the ratio of nitrogen, potassium, and potash. That's all you need to know. And most of them are somewhere within the 5 to 10 range. Like a 5-10-5 fertilizer is a broad spectrum, general purpose, do it for everything fertilizer. It's 5% nitrogen, 10% phosphorus, and 5% potash. That's it. You can add stuff to the soil if you want. We're going to do a compost tea, which is what we're going to add as far as food, but we're not making a compost tea, and I'll explain why later. But all the soil is the same. Look at this. We got a bed. Yay! All right. And it doesn't look so intoxicated. It looks good. This is awesome. Thank you for being my garden warrior for years. Yay. I think you jumped in right after Mrs. Morgan. All right, so who's gonna plant my beets? Yes? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, what you wanna do, you don't wanna go deeper than where this root and the leaf meet, because the beet can grow above the ground. So you can just use your finger, push it in, squeeze it, and then pull it back up until you get it to where you want it to be, which is right. See, I can see that beet right there. Okay, and it's okay if it flops over. It'll right itself up once it roots in. All right, now we're moving on. We've got kale. And Katrina, how are we doing on time?
It's 11:13.
Okay. So what time do we wrap?
At noon. At noon.
Okay, perfect. We got good. We're doing good. All right, we've got kale, and I think this is broccoli. Yes. All right. Now, both of these plants will winter over. Both of these plants you can leave in the ground. One, you do not want to harvest, and one you can harvest later in the season as the leaves grow in. Who wants to tell me which one we don't want to harvest this fall? The broccoli or the kale?
The broccoli.
Why? Kale can grow all winter, but it's actually another reason. What's the money part of the broccoli?
The head.
And if we cut that head off, it's going to make lots of smaller heads. Kale, we're eating the leaves anyway. So if we cut the leaves off, it doesn't matter. What I want to do is I want to plant because it's going to be easier, I want to plant an outer row of broccoli and an outer row of I'm sorry, I'm doing this backwards. I want to do an outer row of kale and an outer row of kale, and I'm going to do inner row of broccoli. Because then that way in the wintertime, when we want to come out here and just cut some stuff real quick, it's going to be easier to get to the kale. So I've got 2 helpers. Come on. And remember, we've got dill also in this bed. The dill's not going to matter. We're going to set up our broccoli about that far apart. And we're going to put them in. Now, yep. Now, as we're planting this, the one thing to keep in mind, you see how we're doing there? That's good. And we're pushing down on there. Does anyone know why when you're putting in the plants, you want to push down after you've planted? I'll give anyone a guess. Why do we push down after we've planted the plants? Heavy rain, no float away. Who said that? What was that I just heard? Say it louder. Say it louder. To get rid of the air pockets. When you have air pockets in the soil, roots are not going to grow into an open air pocket. The other thing that can happen is in an air pocket, you can collect water. If there's not proper drainage, that water can go sour. The souring water will make your soil sour, and roots will never grow into sour soil. If you've had a house plant that you left that tray and you let it stay full of water, and then suddenly the plant that was growing so good, a month later still had water, and a month later started dying, is because you made the soil become sour. Our soil always has to be fresh. It has to be viable. We got our rows of broccoli in. Now, we're going to put in the kale. These kale plants, and the growers do this. There weren't any market packs available, which meant these 2 plants cost 3 times more than these 6 plants cost. So when you can, start your own seed. When you can't, try to buy small. Remember, the plant's going to get big. So what we want to do with the kale is we want to take it out of its pot. We want to divide it. Okay, so gently, we're going to pull it apart. You're going to take that one down there for me. Yeah, lay it out. There you go. Look at you. It looks like you've been here before.
I haven't. It's a couple you for that.
I know. All right, I'm going to let you do this one. And so we pull it apart. And the reason we pull it apart is because we're going to get a bigger plant if they're not growing right up on top of each other. And in this particular garden, we have room. In your home garden, if this is all the room you have, the young lady that was just starting to grow her own plants that had a question earlier about a couple of things, if this is the entire space that you have at home, you can divide it into 3. You can have your tomatoes down here. You could have the squash that we had here. And this area could be where you do your leafy vegetables. So you definitely have the ability to either spread things out. We are fortunate. We've got 5 beds. Some people only have 1. Make the best use of it. And this is 1 extra plant. So, all right. Basically what we've done, and for the harvest that we're going to have next month, well, not the harvest, but the fall celebration that we're going to have, we harvested our spring vegetables. This was tomatoes. This was green beans. This was cucumbers. We harvested our beets. We harvested our zucchini. We harvested the basil. We've now got an entire bed, excuse me. Watch yourself, the camera guy's gonna come around behind you. Got it?
Yeah.
We got an entire bed of beets. This is going to stay all winter. If we were living in Europe, the European they plant beets in succession. That means they just keep planting it because they can harvest. They don't ever really get a really hard freeze. So they can harvest beets all year round. So they will be planting young beets now in order to harvest them in February. Since our ground is going to freeze, what we want to do is keep them in there. As long as they're connected to the plant, the bulb is not going to freeze. The bulb is the beet that we eat. And so next spring, we're going to have beets bigger than any supermarket has from this bed. The Swiss chard that's in this bed, we're going to harvest it next month. And then the cabbage, we're going to leave be until the spring. I've got one more bed that we've got to cover. Let's go check. This looks great. You guys did a great job. Let's give them a round of applause. Come on. Especially you, Candace. We gave you. Yeah. All right. All right. So we got our broccoli. We got our kale. We're going to check on this bed. And the reason we're going to check on it is because we're not quite done over here yet. I've got sage. I've got parsley. And I don't know what farm you grow at, but this is a good beet harvest. You said there wasn't a lot. Look at this.
That's more than I thought.
This is amazing. What says you, Lieutenant Dorsey? I think this looks good. Thank you for taking care of us through all of this. Thank you, sir. This is Lieutenant Dorsey. This is give him a round of applause. He keeps us all safe.
Yes.
Absolutely. So see, we got a good beet harvest. And we're going to sit these, let me see, if we can take these, Margaret, over to where we're staging everything. Yep. Is what I want to do now. And this is someone's hat. I don't want to mess it up. All right. Remember what I said about the dill. It's the same rules that apply with our sage.
What kind of sage is that?
This is just garden sage.
I've never seen it with a round leaf like that.
Yeah, this is garden sage. I may have saved.
No, it's so good. Just gonna leave it through my mask.
I
I
normally
don't know what to
do.
do with my sage.
Yeah, it's just garden sage. Yeah. Yeah, it's just garden sage. Yep. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to pick enough of the sage for us to take home, and I'm going to leave half of the sage for it to be here. Why are we leaving half of it? It's because it's going to live all winter. In the middle of the winter, it's February, it's 0 outside. You go out, you pick some fresh sage, you prick some fresh oregano, you're good. But we are harvesting today, so I'm going to take some of this. And the nice thing about sage, it doesn't matter how you cut it. If we can get in here, I don't know if we can get tight enough in here, but right here, we cut the sage the last time, and all of this baby sage came back. So when you cut it, it doesn't really matter how you cut it. It doesn't matter if I leave these stalks. I like leaving it because you see what it gives us. So I usually cut my sage like that and leave it kind of really gnarly looking. And then we get all of this that we're going to be able to share. Now, same rules apply with the sage. When you take it home, do not wash it. Put it in a bag. Ziploc, close the bag. Put it in your refrigerator. When you're ready to use it, take out what you're going to use, wash that, leave the rest. This stuff's going to stay for 2 months. That tells you how long the food has been on the back of somebody's truck that's coming across country or across the world to get to us.
Derek, the roots on the sage, do they get woody?
The root on the sage will get woody. This is first year plants. Okay. These plants will live, that's a great question. These plants will live for 10, 12 years. They'll get woody. As they get woody, you can go in and pull an entire half of the plant out, and the rest will come back full. Yeah.
What does it need to get wood?
It gets really tough. You see here how it's turned brown? That's getting woody. So the stem is no longer soft and green, but it's hard and not very edible. Yeah. We got parsley. The parsley, it's going to be warm enough for the next month or so. This parsley we're going to take home. There's some spottiness on here. That just tells me something got in and was eating the chloroplast, which is the green cells in a plant. It's not going to hurt us. We wash it off. If you want the best summer, early spring, early fall salad, you take fresh parsley. You take the button mushrooms that have no taste that you never buy. You buy those. You take lime juice and olive oil. Ooh. Mix that together. Parsley, button mushrooms that usually have no taste, lime juice and olive oil, salt and pepper to taste, and you've got the best fresh salad. And the parsley is what brings out the taste in the mushroom. And those mushrooms do have taste. It's just, you got to make them work for it. Grab that for me. And we're going to do the same thing with this parsley. And the oregano, I harvested a lot of it. We've got some to take home. The rest of my oregano here, I'm going to leave in place. Later on in the day, we'll go ahead and clean this bed up some. But I'm going to leave everything else in place. And right now, the only thing I want to add into this bed is I want to add 2 rosemary plants for the winter. These are going to grow in. I'll be able to get fresh rosemary all winter. And Margaret, if you can put 1 in either corner for me and put those in, that'll be great. All right, my garden warriors, we've got 2 more beds, 1 more bed, and we've got to make our compost before we go. Katrina, how are we doing on time?
It's 11:27. Do you have time for a couple of questions?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so we have 2 questions about green tomatoes. So I'll start with the first one. So is it too late to grow green tomatoes in zone 7?
Yes.
Okay. Next green tomato question. Can I maintain my green tomatoes in the garden to ripe, or do I need to remove them now?
Okay, so that question actually ties into the first question.
Okay.
Yes, it's too late to grow green tomatoes in zone 7 right now. If you have plants like the plants that we pulled up and you don't want to pull them up, leave them. Because the baby green tomatoes still have about a month where they're going to keep growing. So you're going to keep growing those green tomatoes that you have. If you were going to go and put a tomato plant in the ground now and expect to get green tomatoes, it's too late for that. But the plants that you have that are established, the plants that you have that have green tomatoes, leave them be. And if you've got a multi-stem tomato plant and 2 of the stems have no tomatoes, cut them off. Because the plant is going to give all of that energy. And where you've got the tomatoes, leave those connected to the plant. Trim the plant back this time of the year, because then the tomatoes are going to get fuller, and you may even get ripe tomatoes by September 30th. If we have a warm September, you can have those green tomatoes turn into ripe tomatoes. The reason we changed it out in our garden today is because we needed to get our cool season vegetables in. So let you dictate to the plant, not the vice versa. But if you wanted to plant a new tomato plant to get green tomatoes this year in zone 7, which is where we are, we're actually 7B, then yes, it's too late.
Do you have time for another question, Derek?
Absolutely.
Okay, so this is from Erica. If you don't have starter plants, what would be good to plant from seed right now for a fall harvest?
You can plant arugula. Now is actually the time that you want to plant cilantro seeds. You cannot find cilantro at the market right now to buy as a seed, but go online to some of the seed sellers, buy the cilantro seeds. The cilantro plants will get to be about 4 to 5 inches tall by late October. You can cut the leaves off, leaving the root and the crown in place. Next year, you will have the biggest cilantro plants that you've ever seen. In this region, they sell the cilantro plants in spring. It is the wrong time to plant them. So cilantro, arugula can be planted now. Arugula, you'll get baby arugula by mid-October. The other thing that I did last year, it was an experiment. It worked wonderfully. If you're going to go out this weekend, do it this weekend. If you can find the seeds on sale, get the sugar snap peas. They're the ones that have to grow up a trellis. Plant them now. You will have the best peas you've ever eaten in October. Nobody plants them now, but I did last year. I had the most amazing snap peas. So any of your leafy vegetables you can plant from seed now, as long as you know it's going to winter over. Kale, collards, cabbage, broccoli, arugula. The lettuces that we're going to do now, I do not recommend doing them by seed right now, because if we have a really hard winter, they will die. But I'll talk about that in a little bit. So any of the cool season and any of your herbs, you can get a jump start on. If you want to plant lavender seeds, rosemary seeds, oregano seeds, thyme seeds, you can get a jump start on all of that this time of year. All right. So these tomatoes, and we talked about this, there are 2 types of tomatoes. Does anybody want to guess? Any of our participants want to guess how come these tomatoes stayed really small? That could have been a reason. Who said that? Yeah! What over here, determine it. See, I feel so good when my folks learn. They are determinate, is what Candace said. Determinate and indeterminate. There are 2 types of tomatoes. The ones that we pulled up that were vining and were running all over the place, those were determinate indeterminate. That means they will continue to grow and grow and grow and grow. They will not stop growing. Determinate tomatoes only grow to a certain point and then they stop. Your heirloom tomatoes, most of them are determinate. The Roma tomatoes, which is what these are, most of them are determinate. It hasn't really been bleached. If you cut it off there, that's going to be an amazing salad tomato. That's a Roma. Cut off the top. Put that in your bag. They'll fight you for it. Now, this one has split too far. What we can do with a tomato like this is we can cut it and we can use it for cooking, or to our person's question about seeds, we can open this up. We can pull all this away. And we can go in here. And you see, these are our seeds. And what we want to do is we want to remove them from the membrane, one by one. Remove them from the membrane. And we can take these seeds, and we don't need any of that fleshy stuff. That fleshy stuff can be put into the compost bin. Keep in mind, if you miss a seed, you will have a tomato next year where you don't want it. So these seeds we'll put on a piece of paper towel and we'll dry those out. When they are completely dry, we'll wrap them in a fresh piece of paper towel. We'll close that paper towel up. We'll put them in a plastic container, airtight. And next February, those will become our determinate patio Roma tomatoes. I'm going to sit them over here because I'm actually not going to do that, but that was just for your education. So these guys, the cages, they can be reused. So we're gonna save those. I need some helpers to come in and pull these tomatoes out. Don't be shy.
You want to pull the whole
Yeah,
plant
the
out?
whole plant's coming out.
Oh, you want to get behind me?
And with these, we'll see if any of them are any good. If they are, we'll reuse them. If not, I think most of them, except for the two green ones, are pretty far gone, so we can recycle those. These two, we can use as green tomatoes. Yep, that's good. Now, anybody want to guess why we put Miss Morgan? Come over here, dear.
Are those marigolds?
They're marigolds. Very good.
I'm learning from you.
You see? A flower for you, dear.
Oh, thank you.
Now, you want to guess why we put marigolds by the tomatoes?
I think they have something to do with keeping insects.
Yes. Very good. Very good. So we put in marigolds this year. Marigolds are one of the plants that are super easy. Go ahead and pull that out while I'm talking. You got one more there. Marigolds are super easy to get new plants. Look at this. Let me see your glove. Look at this. All of these. Okay. All of those are marigold seeds. And what you would do is you'd store that in a paper towel, in a Ziploc, and next year you can put these out and you'll have a bumper crop of marigolds. Yep. So thank you. These marigolds are also going to go. And what I like to do in here, so we get the surprise next year, I'm just going to throw my marigold seeds in. They're going to work that in. And then we're going to throw whatever seeds. The plants we're going to take out. And then, Margaret, if you can bring me a shovel and ask the guys to bring some perlite and some peat moss. Chepe? All right. So we're gonna get the soil locked in.
Can I pass this to you?
Sure, go ahead. Come on. Okay. All right. I'm gonna squeeze by you.
Okay.
You didn't have to move. Well, I was gonna put you to work. Come on, you have plans and everything.
That's what.
Come on. Look, it's soft. It's soft. You put the chard in. Okay, well the chard was intoxicating. You put the beets in.
Yeah, the beets.
All right, what I want us to do is turn that soil like that. I've got one more shovel there for you.
Can I use this?
Now, while they're doing that, he's gonna bring some soil amendment in. All right, now, if you've seen lettuce like this, anybody want to tell me what I need to do with this lettuce before I plant it? This is one called red sail. It's a leaf lettuce. Come on. Just move the plant. This is a leaf lettuce. Does anybody want to guess what we need to do before we plant it? Say that one more time.
Cut it down to the base.
Right. We want to cut it down to the base. Anybody want to tell me why? My goodness, look at this. You're going to do the next workshop. It's bolted. She see that even the terminology is correct. You and Candace are running the next workshop, okay? It's bolted. What does bolting mean? Bolting is when it's going to go to flower, okay? So what we want to do, because of the heat, we planted these seeds. We wanted to have fall lettuce. But Mother Nature gave us 100-degree weather 2 weeks ago. So this thing said, no, I'm going to make seeds. What we're going to do, we're going to cut this plant all the way down. I'm going to leave one leaf in place. Off of that one leaf, there's enough genetic information there for it to make more plants. This is today's salad. This is tomorrow's salad. Very good.
I had a lot of trouble growing lettuce my first year.
So you
It all
learned.
bolted immediately. Yeah.
If you put the lettuce in, like if you buy it from, lettuce is really, really easy to start on the windowsill in 15th of February. And then by the 15th of March, and there's even these little grow sticks that you can buy now that are actually full spectrum lighting. You can get it on that big company that begins with the A. Anyway, you can buy those. They fit in the windowsill, and they have a timer. They'll stay on for 8 hours. You can grow your lettuce seeds starting on February 15th. By March 15th, it's warm enough that you can sit them outside. What you want to start doing is a week before you sit them outside is put them out during the day, but not in full sun, so that they become acclimated. Then you put them in the ground, and then by April 15th, so in 2 months, you're harvesting leaves. If you buy the stuff from the groceries or from the big box store, the problem there is sometimes sometimes it has gotten too hot in those little containers or sitting on the asphalt driveway. So it's already genetically disposed to both. Yeah, but see, good lettuce, good lettuce. Thank you. Thank you. So you're gonna have a salad today?
Yes.
Now, the rest of those are okay. For some reason, it's just that red cell that we need to cut the tops off. Go ahead and work that out. While they're doing that,
Should we plant the lettuce too?
once you get the soil ready, let me know and we'll check in on it. While you're doing that, we wanted to talk about, we had someone ask what we were doing in the soil today, if we were adding different amendments to the soil today. And the answer was no. All of the soil was going to be exactly the same today. But I wanted to talk to everybody about compost tea. Have you heard about compost tea? Okay. Full disclosure, the problem with compost tea is you make it at home. You take all the stuff that we just got out of the garden, you put it in a bucket, you put boiling water on it, and you let it steep like you would a tea. You have to use it within 48 hours, within 2 days. Because even though you boil the water and everything, you can be opening up yourself to E. coli and other dangerous diseases by making compost tea. So if you want to make compost tea, look up a recipe on the internet. There's a lot of them out there. Go right ahead. If not, there's companies like this one. I'm not endorsed by them. It's called Dr. Earth. They have, this one is for tomato, vegetables, and herbs. And what this is, it's all that plant material that I told you about that's been broken down and pasteurized. So we're not going to get the open up to bacteria that we could if we make it at home. They recommend you just pump it at the base of each plant. We're going to give each plant a super boost. All right, we're going to take this, and it stinks. We're going to add that in there. We're going to get my shovel. Thank you. And you just want to, when you do this, you just want to mix it together. And it's there's another product called fish emulsion, which is basically all kind of fish farts. It really stinks, but it's super.
I use it on my house plant.
Super. So you know
Yeah.
how good it is.
It stinks.
It stinks for a couple of days, but then your plants grow and everybody like, what do you do? You're like, fish emulsion. So this one's Dr. Earth. And what I'm going to do is we're going to go back over here where the beets were.
And you poured about an ounce?
I put about, for 5 gallons, I put a couple of ounces, I'd say. And what I want to do is, I just want to spoon a little bit on top of each plant. And then when we wrap up today, I'm gonna have my folks, when we wrap up today, I'm gonna have my folks come and water the leaves. Does anybody want to tell me after doing this why I want to add some extra water to the leaves? What can a fertilizer do? It can burn the leaves, exactly. So we're gonna do this. We're gonna do it for all of the plants that we put in today. It's like you see, it's brown gold. You're gonna go ahead and mix that up. If you wanted to do it in a applicator or something like that, you could. Miss Morgan, are you taking off? Sorry, folks that are watching. Thank you for being here. We'll talk soon.
What do you mean if you want to put in an applicator?
If you wanted to use like one of the spray applicators, you could, like the pump up ones. Yeah, you could do like, but make sure if you've got one of those applicators, you're not mixing two different things together. So we're gonna do that for all of these. And we're gonna make sure, as a matter of fact, can you grab me one of those 1 gallon containers that the kale was in? Yeah, yeah, just give me one of those. I'll show you a quick way that we can do this. This is a really good way. And so the nice thing about using an all organic fertilizer, can anyone tell me why I'm just throwing it on here indiscriminately? Is because even though it can burn, it will not ever over fertilize. When you use synthetic fertilizers, you can over fertilize a crop. It can end up being too much nitrogen, which would make nothing but leaf growth. It could end up being too much phosphorus, which would mean your tomatoes would get way, way, way too big and pop. So you could end up over fertilizing. With a natural fertilizer like this, your plants are going to take what they need and they're going to leave the rest. The rest is going to leach. Can anyone tell me what leaching is? Yes, going back into the soil. The rest is just going to leach naturally back into the soil. So there, the beets are ready. We'll check on them next month. Is there any other questions, Katrina?
Yes, Derek, we do have a question. The first one about composting. I've heard you talk about it before in the past. Some people use animal manure. It's organic for compost. What is your opinion for gardening on its use?
I would never use dog, cat, any carnivore manure. I would never use. Horse manure, cow manure have been used for centuries. The only thing about any manure is that it has to be aged. A horse manure, a cow manure needs to be aged a good 6 months. It has to have all of that stuff cooked out and broken down. I would never use a dog manure. I would never use a cat manure. Any animal that eats another animal, I would never put that in as a manure, ever. It's just not going to work out. It's going to be a bad thing because those animals can actually have diseases in their manure that can pass on to us. So we don't want that.
Okay, other question. When can I plant seeds outside for lettuce in spring?
The frost-free date is around April 15th. You can put them out around March 15th. If you want to cover them over with a cold frame, just look up the word cold frame and you'll see how you can make your own cold frame. It can even be just putting plastic over top of this bed until the seeds germinate. But March 15th is about the time.
Okay, and we have one last question, Derek. We were talking about obstacles to urban gardening before, and someone asked a question about rodents.
Rodents? Did you say rodents, Katrina?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so rats and mice will be attracted to rotting vegetables. Before we started today, there was a zucchini that had started to rot. If you take those out of the equation, most of the time a rat is not interested in a zucchini. It is interested in an old pork chop. It is interested in an old chicken bone. So it's not going to come after your tomato. Now, if your tomato's cut open and rotting, get it off the vine, because it's also going to attract other things like birds and stuff. So most of the time, if you keep a good housekeeping in your garden, you keep all the rotted vegetables out of your garden, you're not going to have a problem.
Okay, no more questions for now, Derek.
Okay, and how are we doing on time?
It's 11:50.
Okay, my garden warriors, any questions about what we did today? And if we do, I'll come to you. Put your hands up, we'll come around. I know there's some questions. The question was, where do we get these kind of plants this time of year? These were all bought from a big box grower. So if you look at your hardware stores, your big hardware stores, a lot of them will have them, because we have become more and more into gardening. So they're growing the secondary crop, which normally you wouldn't see. Normally it would be right to ornamental kale or pansies, but this year they are available. The things like the rosemary have come from a professional greenhouse. The mint, there's 2 different types. That's all come from my nursery. So you can grow stuff out yourself. This time of year, if you wanted to start seeds in August, like if you had started these lettuce plants in August, they'd be about this big. I mean, I'm sorry, in July, they would be about this big now, and you could get them in the garden. More questions?
My daughter actually started basil from seed at camp. And so her plants now are about 2 inches tall. What should we do next?
There is an Aero, A-E-R-O garden. It's about $50. You can get it on that big A store online. You could put them in there, but the Aero garden grows everything from hydroponically.
Okay.
But you can use it for the light. You can put it in a windowsill. The basil will continue to grow. It's going to get leggy. What does that mean? It won't be as compact as the stuff that we had. Or you can get a full spectrum light and put it on the window and put the basil plant in the window, or put it on your countertop. I've got one in the under my kitchen counter cabinet, a full spectrum one. It's just a stick, and it comes on automatically. It stays on for 8 hours. I've got basil underneath there, and I just keep cutting basil.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I have a huge rosemary and a huge sage plant. I've had protein for like 5 years. At some point, does that just need to be taken out?
If you do what's called, I'll try to show you with one of these.
Derek, could you repeat the question? So it wasn't quite clear.
So she has both a rosemary and a sage plant that's gotten quite old. And she's asking if it can be, should it be just taken out and put a new one in? The first answer, the easy thing, yeah, you could do that. The other thing that you can do, imagine if this were a rosemary plant that was 5 times the size. The structure is all about the same. What you want to do is you want to go in and you want to find a spot where there's young growth. You see, that's young growth right there.
Right.
So down below in all that woody mess that is now your rosemary tree, there's some young growth. What you want to do is you want to cut off right above that. And then the same thing, you go piece by piece. And you would do it here. And then you would do it here. And you just try to find what looks like a healthy young growth. You see, I cut right above that young growth. And then you would do it here. So now we have rosemary for the casserole. And we have a rosemary plant that has a new leaf on life. If you have parts that are really big and gnarly and have started to break away, you could pull that away from the plant, backfill that with soil, and the rest of the plant will still grow. Or you can just start a new plant. This time of the year, if you want to have rosemary through the winter,
I mean, it still tastes good.
yeah,
But
it's gonna still
I
taste.
mean, it's just like,
Yeah, so you can start chopping it,
okay,
but I would wait. This time of year with rosemary, I would wait until spring
okay.
because rosemary is a true subshrub, rosemary and lavender. So once you prune them, they will grow, even if it's going into winter. The sage, you could prune now and it would just go dormant.
So the sage, I usually cut back to like a little
Bush.
ball,
Yeah.
basically. But then it grows back like 2 feet tall
Right.
in no time. So,
Next spring, what you can do is dig the sage up the entire spring, in the spring, the entire root ball. Take a shovel and cut it in half.
okay.
And then the best half, cut that in half. And take just a quarter and plant it back. And the other 3 parts you give away and say, maybe you'll live, maybe you won't. Keep the best one for you, you know. So yeah, all right. Any other questions from my participants?
Yeah, in my neighborhood, the tips of the trees have turned brown and they're dead and they're dropping. I was wondering what's going on.
I'll give you one good guess. It's the $1 million answer. You'll get more giveaways than anyone. What happened in June and July here?
Cicadas.
Corona. She said corona. It was a C word. We knew it was a C word. You were close, but that's not double jeopardy, okay? What the cicadas did, and they did it mostly to the oak trees, and I don't know if we can pan up and see these, but we're talking about all those tips, all the tips of the trees that are dead. The cicadas went up, and the female cicada has a knife at the end of her tail or the end of her body. I don't think she has a tail. And she would cut into that and lay her eggs. So where she cut into the layer of the tree has now died. The nymphs, the little eggs have already hatched out, become nymphs and drop to the ground. And they're burrowing as we speak. And they'll be there for another 17 years. But you hear that noise? That's a cicada, but it's not a 17-year cicada. So cicadas happen all the time. That 17-year brood is one that is especially large. But what we're listening to right now, that sound, that noise, are 2 cicadas trying to find each other that are just regular cicadas on their regular life cycle. But they all have to use a tree as the vessel to get their eggs to grow, and then the nymphs drop down back into the ground. So we see it in mass this year because of the 17-year cicada. Any other questions? Oh, we got lettuce to plant. Oh my goodness, hold on. My people are gonna desert me in 2 minutes. All right. Katrina, while we're doing this, if we need to wrap up, let me know. We're gonna be putting in lettuce. This is the last crop that we're adding today. I need 2 other volunteers over here.
Okay, Derek. So I'll just quickly finish up. You guys continue to work in the garden. So I would just have to say, this is the first workshop we've had where we've had gardeners on site in almost like a year and a half, going on 2 years, almost 2 years. And so it's really, really nice to see our, like you call them warriors, but we've had gardeners with us for over the course of the 10 years that we've run this program, but also some new faces as well. So very, very happy to see you guys back in the garden again, interacting. And to our attendees on Zoom, thank you so much for joining us. I also see some names that I've recognized over the course of the summer. So thank you once again for your support. Please join us on September 18th for our fall planting. We'll be back with more information, more tips. So once again, thank you so much for joining us for this workshop. I'll keep you updated. I'll be posting this month's recording and last month as well, later online, later in the week. So you'll have access for all that information. So once again, thank you so much for your support over the, I mean, really, it is quite overwhelming. Yes, Derek, do you have a comment? Derek, a question?
Yeah, Katrina, and just make sure that all of our new visitors today virtually sign up, make sure we have your email, make sure that you continue to follow the museum so you'll find out about all the great programming that we want to bring you beyond September.
Yeah.
And if, sign up early for the September workshop. If everything stays the way it is, I believe, Katrina, it'll be another one where we'll have the ability to have some participants, correct?
On site, yes, yes, definitely. And just so you know, we're now open fully to the public internally. So our exhibition Food for the People is on view both outside in the plaza and inside in our gallery. We open at 11 o'clock. Times have changed a little bit from Tuesdays through Sundays. Yeah. And so, yes, please, Food for the People is on view right now. So if you're interested in looking at food systems in the region, in DMV, but also celebrating food culture and just traditions, please join us on site. So once again, enjoy the rest of your day and please take care. We'll be in touch. Bye-bye.
And our gardeners are doing it. We're doing it.